Right. Well, we are at 5:30 and I think we're going to jump in and get started, guys. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for joining us for a curatorial talk with Kimi Kitada. We are so thrilled at Charlotte Street Foundation to welcome Kimi Kitada, the Jedel Family Foundation Curatorial Fellow. Previously, she was curatorial assistant at the Museum of Contemporary Art, Los Angeles. Prior to that, served as public programs and research coordinator at Independent Curators International in New York. Her track record of significant independent exhibitions includes work for Transformer, Washington, D.C., Garrison Hahn Center for Social Innovation and Temp Art Space in New York, and internationally with RQ13 in Rome and Budapest Art Market in Hungary. She's co-founder of Altbreak, which provides free and accessible contemporary art programming through partnerships with local community-based nonprofits in New York. Kitada received a BA in Art History and Classics from Bucknell University and an MA in Museum Studies from NYU. And so tonight, the way this is going to go, Kimi is going to do a presentation and speak a little bit about her practice. And then there will be some time for Q&A after when we'll open it up to the group. If you don't mind when we're doing Q&A, and I'll remind folks of this when we get there, but try to send it through chat if you can. That way we can kind of help manage those questions for Kimi. So thanks so much. And Kimi, thank you for being here. And we're all eager to learn more about you.
Thank you so much, Amy. So I'm going to share my screen in just a sec. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to speak a bit about my kind of overview of my journey to get to Kansas City and talk about 3 recent exhibitions that I've done. Let's see. Okay, so I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area near Palo Alto, which was a bit of a liberal bubble. And then right after that, I moved to Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, where I went to undergrad at Bucknell. And that was an experience where I really wanted to know what it would be like to live in a rural part of the US. And Lewisburg is really in a remote area of Pennsylvania. And the campus life was really exceptional because it was a small kind of liberal arts school. And it was a place where the professors were really encouraging and incredibly generous. So I learned a lot and moved on to New York right after that. And that's where I did an MA program in museum studies at NYU. And so that was a 2-year program where you really generated your own scholarship and could craft the curriculum to fit your own interests. So that was really exciting to be able to learn exhibition histories, exhibition design, conservation of contemporary art, and all about interactive technology in museums. And my master's thesis was on curating performance art in a large-scale museum. So I thought a lot about the work of Marina Abramović, Tino Segal, and Clifford Owens in recent museum shows. And right after that, I went to the Met for a special exhibition called Cloud City that was by the artist Tomas Saraceno. And in that role, I was an interpretive guide for the work. It was a large-scale installation where visitors could walk into the work. And it was really exciting. And right after that is when I started at Independent Curators International as the public programs and research coordinator. So in that sense, I think I had kind of polar opposite experiences in that the Met had a really traditional view of exhibition making and operated for a wide-ranging public, whereas ICI is more experimental in its approach toward curating and is very open-minded and really values underrepresented narratives. So ICI that time was almost 5 years and it was really influential to the way I think about exhibitions today. I'm really grateful to Maria del Carmen Carrion and Renaud Proch at ICI, who were always very supportive and challenged my work. So I gained a lot of experience in New York and then went over to Los Angeles right after that. In my role at MoCA, I worked on a dream exhibition with Amanda Hunt, who at the time was senior curator and director of public programs. There was an exhibition of performance art with the Chinese artist named Xu Shen, who is based in Shanghai. And that was really exciting. And let's see. So now I'll speak a bit about what I think makes a good exhibition and think critically about the role of museums in our society at large and how exhibitions can be relevant and of the moment. So I think over the years, seeing so many shows, I've kind of thought a lot about what makes a show really impactful to me. And that's the originality of concept and creating new scholarship, or kind of providing a new angle on existing scholarship on a topic, highlighting a diversity of viewpoints. So not just one interpretation on a subject, but multiple perspectives. And lastly, sparking a dialogue for the viewers when they're seeing the show, and then also a lot of reflection after seeing the exhibition after weeks or months. So then I wanted to speak about a couple shows that I feel are really influential to my work. And so one of those is Radical Presence, Black Performance in Contemporary Art. This was a show curated by Valerie Cassell Oliver when she was at CAM Houston in 2012. And then it traveled to the Studio Museum in Harlem after that in 2013. And it also traveled to the Walker. So you all may have seen this one, but it's a really historic, well-researched exhibition that acknowledges the seminal contributions of Black artists to a larger canon of performance art. And what I really love about this show is that it presents all these different modes of display. So there were live performances in the galleries, video documentation, and historical ephemera and props from performances. So I feel like it gives a really wide-ranging view of how you can display performance in the museum. And then another show that I really love is Kerry James Marshall's Mastery, that was on view at Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles and also traveled to the Met and MCA Chicago. So this was curated by Helen Molesworth along with Ian Altavere, who was at the Met, and Dieter Rollstrata, who was a guest curator for the MCA Chicago. So this was a 35-year retrospective of Kerry James Marshall that was really long overdue. And Helen Molesworth, as a curator, really prioritizes the scholarship and presented the work in this really beautiful installation, as you can see here. And then even more importantly, she published this really authoritative exhibition catalog. So the public reception and the critical reception of the show were really remarkable. There were huge lines down the block to see the show when it was on view in LA. And I think just people coming out and seeing the show and being so affected by it. So yeah, I also just wanted to mention other modes of exhibition making. So the last couple shows I just talked about were traditional in the sense that they were just artworks hanging on walls, but I also wanted to think through more radical ways of seeing what an exhibition is. Like Do It is a project by Hans Ulrich Obrist that's an ongoing, never-ending exhibition. So that's actually being traveled by ICI, and every time it's presented, this is a compendium of artist instructions. So depending on the context and the institution that's presenting it, they choose different artist instructions for the show. And then on the right, you can see Team Lab is a collective based in Tokyo, and they do these really immersive technology-based shows. The one right here was on view at Pace Art and Technology Space in Northern California in Menlo Park. And I just wanted to mention those two models as pushing the idea that there's no one right way to curate a show, and allow room for a lot of different modes of presentation. So just speaking briefly about my own curatorial values and point of view, I think what interests me most about curating is exploring a topic from multiple angles. So everyone kind of looks at an artwork through their own personal lens. And I really believe that every person's interpretation of a work is valid. And I don't want to impose one way of seeing, but I just want to offer a lens to view the work. I am excited about amplifying emerging artists of color, which I've done in a lot of recent shows, and also developing an educational experience for various publics. So ideally, I'd like people to leave the exhibition thinking about a topic in a new way, or being compelled to read more and learn more about something. So now I'll jump into 3 recent exhibitions that I worked on. The first one is done with a collective called 7 by 8. So we all met in 2013 when we were doing an international residency program in Vienna and Budapest. We spent 1 month in Vienna, 1 month in Budapest, being fully engaged in the art scenes there. And we did a number of studio visits and site visits and met with artists and curators to get a sense of the varying cultural landscapes in each city. So this show kind of originated out of our work together. After the residency ended, we all dispersed to our different hometowns, and then we continued to meet every month on Google Hangouts. So this show in particular was kind of a curatorial experiment where each of the 7 curators here, we each selected one artist that we really wanted to work with. So the show itself is postscript correspondent works. It's really in dialogue with the lineage of male art. And it documents an ongoing set of remote conversations between artists and curators. And it's really representative of the relationships between the two and how we're kind of making the curating process transparent by displaying all the postcards and emails and letters that we worked on 3 months leading up to the exhibition. And in addition to putting the correspondence on view, we also had this final object that we asked the artist to send directly to the space in Rome. So in that sense, we thought we'd try this out of giving complete control to the artist to choose a final work and send it. And so we kind of gave that trust and that deep level of like care to the artist to choose what they wanted to put on view. So as you can see, this is correspondence between the artist Thomas Mader and the curator Melissa Holang, who's based in Singapore. And so each pairing of artists and curators displayed the works in their own way. Thomas and Melissa here, they decided to frame works together. And here with the artist Alessandro Vizzini and the curator Roberta Palma, they took some typewritten letters and attached them to wood panels. And then the final object was the marble work on the end that has small imprints on it. And then this is the work between Miguel Baroche, who's based in Portugal and Canada, and the curator Jordana Franklin. They displayed the letters in these envelopes where the viewers could pull them out, read them, and then stick them back in. And the final object was on the right, that larger canvas work. And then I chose the artist Kata Trunker, who's based in Budapest. So we had done a studio visit with her and I was completely in love with her work. And then we ended up doing a lot of postcards and handwritten letters. And her final object were those postcards on the left where she has spliced into the image. So although I'm not sure if I would use this exhibition model again in the future, I'm glad that we did it once and could see the outcome. So another show that is recent is at Transformer, Where We Came From and Where We're Going. And this is an exhibition that confronted issues of immigration. Just 1 second. Okay. Just a small lighting issue. So this is an exhibition that confronted issues of immigration through personal narratives and family histories. So it was selected through an open call process where they received over 80 exhibition ideas. And the show itself was really meaningful to me just because my dad had immigrated to the US from Japan when he was young. And this show is really representative of curatorial projects that I'm most interested in at the moment. So the 5 artists that I chose for this show, they were all really approaching ideas of migration and identity as first, second, or third generation immigrants in a really poetic and conceptual way. So let's see, here's an install shot. On the left is the work of Karina Aguilera-Spirsky. And she did this really beautiful 30-minute single channel video work. It's called The Perilous Journey of Maria Rosa Palacios. And it traces the journey of her great-grandmother's migration through Ecuador. So in the video work, you see like a single camera following the expedition on a foot through Ecuador in the year 1906. So in this way, the artist really breathes a new life into her family's story and traces her own personal lineage and identity. And let's see. The work by Keisha Scarville is her Passport series, that's 2013 to now, and the images are small passport images of her father. The artist was raised in Brooklyn by her parents who had immigrated from Guyana, and she reinterprets the passport image by layering on with subtle gestures like paint or glitter or collage or other types of mark making. And Eliseo Cassiano, he flew to DC to make this new work on site. It's called Low Hanging Fruit, and it was an acrylic mural directly on the wall. It reflects his personal heritage as Mexican American and also the larger notion of what makes up American identity. The central image is the artist's grandmother, and he also integrates a lot of imagery from the American Southwest, like the Ford Bronco that's metallic, and it kind of creates this melding of both Mexican and American identity. And then also included were Gelare Koshgojlerin, the US Customs Demands to Know, is an ongoing series of these really beautiful LED lit packages. So the packages were sent to the artist from her mother, who lives in Iran, and this was during periods of US sanctions on Iran, and the personal objects were screened by the government. So the work kind of symbolizes a close relationship between the artist and her mother across time and space, but also touches upon this conflicted history between the countries of US and Iran. And on the right is Donna Shri Gadiar's work, Transitional Threads. So these are really personal stories from recent immigrants to the US. So Donna Shri had interviewed the immigrants and then illuminated the text here. So she hand cut every letter. And a lot of the text touches upon leaving a country behind, displacement, isolation, and assimilation. So presented as a collective body of works, my aim was really generating empathy for the immigrant experience in the US, and by drawing on a number of different media, such as the video, sculpture, painting, and photographs, the exhibition provides a multiplicity of voices and shares these deeply personal stories. And lastly, I wanted to speak a bit about Jushen in just a blink of an eye. This was work that was acquired by MoCA under the leadership of Klaus Biesenbach. He was really interested in collecting performance art at the museum. And so after acquiring this work, we put it on view last year. And in this process, we hired about 20 professional dancers and trained them on how the work was to be performed. And we had a number of Skype calls with the artist who stayed in Shanghai, but we were just trying to ensure that the installation was exactly as the artist envisioned the work. So I'd say the main challenge for this work was the duration of the performance. Instead of a finite time where the performances would happen in the museum, the work was on view continuously from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. So that requires a strenuous amount of physical endurance for the performers, and also constant attention from the gallery attendants to watch out for the safety of our performers and interactions with the visitors. So the work itself is these four pedestals with four performers. They're floating mysteriously in midair. And I can't go too much into detail into how the performers are able to hold the pose, just because the artist really was adamant about keeping a lot of the work a little bit shrouded in mystery. But with these living sculptures, it really prioritizes the body as material, and viewers experience time and stillness in the space. So as you walked into this large gallery and you would walk around the bodies, they would be completely immobile, and the only tiny movement that you would see is the eyelids blinking. So it was just a really magical experience. And what I learned from this show was just about the care and support of the performers. That was really integral to the success of the show. So financially, it's just so difficult to be a professional dancer in LA, and a lot of the dancers were holding down multiple jobs, and they'd have to end their shift at 5 p.m. and then run to another job. So we felt like it was really important to be really supportive of them financially and also emotionally, just because usually in an exhibition, if you open it and the objects are inanimate, they just exist in space. But with the performers, this particular work was really taxing on the body. And so we had to be prepared for any joint or muscle pain and provide dancers with everything that they needed in the green room. And lastly was the performer notes. So the performers all did exit interviews following the performance. And so if this work were to go on view in the future, or if the work went on loan to a requesting museum or organization, we documented absolutely everything and everything the dancers experienced. So it could be mounted in a similar way in the future. Here are a couple other install images of this work. And just to wrap up, through collecting these experiences, I've learned a huge amount from every show that I've worked on, and I'm really excited to be here in Kansas City and get to know the artists working here and the cultural landscape here at large. I think overall my goals through Charlotte Street are to create meaningful exhibitions and also personal connections with artists who I might be able to work with in the future. So if you'd like to have a studio visit or either on Zoom or in person or chat more, just please feel free to email me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Kimi. So we've had Kimi with us for just a few weeks, really. She made it here very quickly from California, so we were excited with the speed at which that was able to happen. But she has had a little bit of time in Kansas City and has started doing some studio visits. So that's been super exciting. For those of you that don't know, the Jedel Family Foundation Curatorial Fellow position is a 2-year position. So Kimi will be with us for 2 years. We anticipate that through the end of this year, she'll be doing a lot of research and then kind of starting doing work in public space and at Charlotte Street's campus starting next spring. Anyway, with that, I'd like to open it up to questions. If anybody has anything they'd like to ask, maybe some questions in the chat. And maybe while we're waiting on that, Kimi, I don't know if you are willing to share your kind of first impressions of Kansas City and some of the things you've been up to while you've been here.
Yeah, my first impressions are really, I've been really pleasantly surprised at the diversity of spaces here. So I have spent time every day. I'm trying to go see either a new art space or do a couple studio visits. So that's been really exciting to see. I was telling Amy before that there's just so many more, like probably double the amount of spaces that I thought were in Kansas City. There's like just a huge range of different nonprofits and art spaces, community centers. All of this is just like so incredible to see.
All right, guys, any questions at all? Quiet group today. And you can ask out loud if you want to just jump in. That's okay too. I know some of you are on phones. Okay. Kimi, is there anything from your previous experience that you're kind of bringing in with you that you think might be something you expand upon while you're here, or something that you're kind of thinking about as you're meeting with artists and you're kind of learning what Kansas City is about, something that's kind of sticking in your head, a little kernel of an idea?
Let's see. I mean, I think I am still meeting so many new people. So I did have some ideas. I mean, I think one thing coming into this role, I was really thinking so much about technology in the body, and I think that's something that I can probably expand upon in the future. But meeting some artists who are also thinking about similar topics was really exciting to me. So thinking through how in the future, with all the interactive technologies that we have and wearable technologies, and how we kind of change how we react in a space based on like the digital and the physical. I'm really interested in that intersection. And so I think I'm gonna be exploring a bit more on that.
Awesome. I got people to talk. There's a few that kind of just fired off in here. So from our friend Diane Burkholder, question from the Facebook: what are some inspirations or ideas that are kind of sparking at you from your brief time in Kansas City so far?
Let's see. I mean, I think one thing that I've been thinking a lot about is earlier today, I was at the Johnson County Arts and Heritage Center, and I was walking through the historical part of the museum and thinking about mapping and how that affects identity in terms of race. And that was an idea that I've been thinking a bit about, and kind of definitely how city lines and urban space is drawn. And a lot of the historical exhibition was talking about home ownership and that kind of being really highly influenced by race and the race-based covenants that are in some property owner, some of the language of the ownership documents, and how that for years had prevented a lot of people of color from owning land. And that's something I thought quite a bit about. And I think I'm still researching it with this book called Color of Law.
Awesome. Well, and it's not a pop quiz, not to put you on the spot with those things, but okay. And then Steve Paul asks, will your emphasis be on creating exhibits locally with KC area artists or importing exhibits and work from elsewhere?
Ah, thanks for the question. Yeah, it will be a mix of working both with locally with KC area artists, as well as some artists who I think I have worked with in the past, or other artists who I've not had the opportunity to work with yet. So definitely, I'd love to kind of create a dialogue with both a lot of Kansas City artists and then those working outside of Kansas City at the moment. I think through the years, I've always thought about artist practices and kind of kept like a mental Rolodex of people that I've been wanting to work with and might not have in the last few years. And so if the right show comes up or something, I might reach out to someone that I like met 3 or 4 years ago. And yeah, and I think thematically, I'll just meet as many people as possible and see how I can kind of formulate shows from there.
Excellent. Elvis Acapul asks, hi, Kimmy, and welcome to KC. How are you thinking about adapting your practice to some of the constraints precipitated by the pandemic?
Yes, great question. I think with the pandemic, we've been thinking a lot about early of next year. And one thing that I'm still formulating is some type of time-based festival that may happen both online and socially distanced. Although, yeah, it's not fully done yet. It's still in the works. But I think because of the constraints of group like gatherings of large groups, that will do some kind of socially distanced safe way if the performance does happen in real space. And if it happens online, I'd like to work with artists who really intend for the work to be in digital space, so it can be fully seen.
Let's see. There's a couple of great resources in the chat, Kimmy, when we tie up Color of Law, you mentioned, and then Christian Benaz mentions A City Divided by Sherry Lamb Shermer as another great resource. So a little bit of a research share in the chat.
Amazing. This is so great. Thank you so much.
Sorry, just and this is kind of a quick conversation, but tying things up. Does anybody else have any other questions for Kimmy, or kind of invitations? Or I will say, we think of Kansas City as being a friendly, welcoming place, and folks, I hope you feel welcome to reach out to Kimmy for studio visits. She did share her email, but if you go to Charlotte Street's website, there's also contact information for her there. It is strange and awkward to come start a new job at a new place in the middle of a pandemic, and so she's been reaching out and showing up in space, but feel like you could reach out to her as well. So yeah. Thank you so much. Um, okay, Kimmy, any final words for the group?
Oh, I just want to thank everyone for coming out just because it's a very uncertain moment in time. And so I'm really glad that people could take a minute to step out, and thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, everyone. And we'll be doing a little bit more. I don't know. I would kind of consider this a community touch point, and a way for us to kind of keep conversations going while things are kind of rough in terms of casual meetups. And so that's something we're thinking a lot about at Charlotte Street right now. And hopefully you'll see coming up some more opportunities for us all to kind of get together and at least to be some boxes in a space, if not people in a space. So we look forward to seeing y'all again soon. Okay, thank you.